Hi everyone. There's two big stories that are dominating the news at the moment: the German federal election and the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I will be covering both those issues, no doubt. But this one is actually something that I hadn't planned. I literally just read this in the newspaper. The report's actually from about a week ago, but similar things have happened more often than not, and I find it troubling frustrating and concerning, actually, as a citizen. And it's about the accountability of private firms. In this case, a firm employed by a council in Hertfordshire to penalise a man for supposedly fly tipping. I'm just going to read out the report from The Guardian. It's not too long, just bear with me. And I think it's disgusting. I'll say right now, despite what they claim, I think some of these private firms behave like thugs. And I don't think there's enough accountability. I don't think there's enough pressure on them. I don't think there's enough scrutiny. And this is the report. So it's from the 14th of February, and the report is by Amelia Hill in The Guardian. Man fined £500 for fly tipping after envelope blows out of bin in Hertfordshire. Private enforcement agency employed by Welwyn Hatfield Council issued fixed penalty notice to Martin Fielder. A man who gave up his job to care for his young children when his wife died has been fined £500 and threatened with a criminal record after an envelope blew out of his bin. Martin Fielder was sent a letter 6 weeks ago from District Enforcement, a private enforcement agency employed by Welwyn Hatfield Borough Council, to issue fixed penalty notices on commission. The company has paid a portion of the fines it issued. Fielder said the FPM stated that it was in breach of Section 33 of the Environmental Protection Act 1990 on the offence of fly tipping because the box of my address on it had been found 80 metres from my house. The letter stated that if the fine was not paid within 28 days, the matter would be referred to the Magistrates' Court, where I could go to prison for up to 12 months or receive a bigger fine or both. So this is a guy being threatened with a custodial sentence and a hefty fine. 6 years ago, Fielder agreed with his terminally ill wife, a teacher, that he would give up his job to look after the two children after she died. The family now survive on his savings and his wife's life insurance. I've never had any brush with the law before, said Fielder, a former IT specialist for the David Lloyd Leisure Company. I've been in a state of constant anxiety ever since. It's exhausting. I can imagine so. Fielder's is the latest in a string of fly-tipping fines. A pensioner from North London was fined after she swept part of her street and put the litter in a bin over the road. In another case, Isabel Pippin was handed an FPN after she left an IKEA cabinet outside her home for people to take. There are no formal grounds for appealing against an FPN, and if you do not pay within 28 days, the case will go to court, where fines of up to £2,500 plus costs can be imposed. If the fine is not paid, the court can increase it by 50% and issue an arrest warrant. Fielder told District Enforcement that he did not know how the envelope and it had ended up on the grass, but the strong winds the previous night could have blown it out of its recycling bin. He sent them a recent picture of a fox by his tipped-over bin and evidence of packages that had gone missing over that period. I gave them 3 strong reasons why they couldn't assume I had done anything wrong, he said. They ignored me. Fielder complained to his council and told District Enforcement he intended to argue his case in court. On Tuesday, the company changed the fine to a £100 littering offence, so they're backing down slightly. He said it feels very much like they have a standard process of issuing a big fine, and if you push back, they issue a smaller one instead. Fielder is now deciding whether to challenge the fine in court. It's tempting to pay, because going to court risks an increased fine and a criminal record, he said, but I don't want to capitulate. I haven't done anything wrong. This is about a principle of fairness. Josie Appleton, the conveyor of the Manifesto Club of Civil Liberties Group, said these companies are stretching the law beyond any reasonable interpretation to enable the issuing of penalties. A district enforcement officer said officers are trained to carry out enforcement in line with legal standards and the council's enforcement policy. If a dispute remains unresolved, we will carefully assess the evidence. A spokesperson for Welwyn and Hatfield Borough Council said cabinet members recently questioned district enforcement to ensure their processes are consistent and appropriate, including reviewing disputed penalties. Well, that's a very vapid response from district enforcement. I looked at the website. They're based, I believe, in Swadlincote in Derbyshire. It looks professional enough on the surface. They claim that they act fairly, and they claim that there is an appeal process. But this guy's experience and experience of many others suggests otherwise. I think it is grossly, grossly unfair to just issue this arbitrary fine and not even give people the recourse to dispute it. Um, it certainly is plausible that when there's high winds, a bin can blow over, a fox could be ravaging in a bin. And there's another point which I came across this was posted on Sunderland news source, which is that bin men themselves are often sloppy in how they put bins back. I've often had a situation when I'm collecting our bins, where our bin is halfway down the street. Because the bin men just throw it back anywhere. They won't put it outside the garage where they found it. They'll just throw it back anywhere on the street. So I think the training of bin men has to be looked at as well. It's a disgrace what they are threatening towards this guy now. What if the person that they're threatening is a vulnerable person in the sense that maybe they're, it could be anything. They could have learning difficulties. It could be an elderly person, and they're just out of fear. They'll just pay up 500. It's a thuggish tactic, and I think it's disgusting. District enforcement, you're behaving like the mob. You're a disgrace, and you can claim that you behave fairly. This would strongly suggest otherwise. I have no reason to believe this guy isn't telling the truth. I do have reason to not trust district enforcement because this is how private firms behave. It's the same with car fine companies such as Europarks. There's just no accountability, and there's no recourse for people to really fight back. The only way is to threaten to go to the press or to stand your ground, and people shouldn't be in that situation. I think councils need to think very carefully about who they're employing. I believe that these private companies, they claim that they're all about environmental protection. I don't believe it. If they are really as fair as they claim, they would look at a case like this and just use common sense and think, okay, he's even provided evidence to suggest that a fox is ravaging in his bin. It's very plausible that when you have strong winds, a bin can blow over. Unfortunately, the public are in a situation, it used to be that you'd scratch off your address to deter thieves. Now, I would say we're going to have to scratch off our address to avoid these private company thugs from persecuting people. It's unlikely that he would have actually gone to jail, but just the threat of that hanging over his back is a disgrace. So, what's the right approach? I think councils need to come under pressure to really look at who they're dealing with. The last paragraph reads, Cabinet members recently questioned district enforcement to ensure the processes are consistent and appropriate. Good, but the fact of the matter is this council's employing them in the first place. I'm all for environmental protection, but fairness has to be applied, and just arbitrarily persecuting people for alleged fly tipping without looking at the evidence is grossly unfair. Now, fly tipping is a problem. You see people, there's been cases of people caught on camera literally bringing the rubbish to someone else's property, just dumping it in the countryside. I've no problem with those sort of people being persecuted. It's selfish, it's bad for the environment. Yeah, persecute them, prosecute them, I should say. I'm saying persecute because that's what it feels like. This is an abuse of power. I'm utterly disgusted by it. At the very least, there should be a much better process for raising complaints or raising an appeal. It clearly isn't good enough. So, district enforcement can say what they want. The website looks pretty polished and professional enough, but the way they treat people is disgusting. There needs to be much more scrutiny of private firms. Councils need to really consider who they're working with, and where this sort of thing arises a lot, then they have to consider something is going wrong here. This is an abuse of power. I think it's really about raising money more than genuine environmental protection. The fact that they initially issued a fine of £500 and they backed down, the fact that they backed down suggests that they know damn well that this guy hasn't done anything wrong. but they just don't want bad publicity. So the decent thing to do would be to waive the fine altogether and consider there just isn't enough evidence to suggest that he was deliberately fly tipping. I mean, it's absurd. Um, but they're greedy, so they're still going to issue a fine and threaten him with a fine. Um, if I was in a better position, if I was a wealthy man, I would honestly send this guy some money, because I hate when ordinary people are persecuted by faceless bureaucrats. I hate when ordinary people have to deal with these sort of private companies who have no accountability. It's disgusting, and it's a big problem in this country. And I'd like to see more senior politicians calling it out. Um, are we going to see that? I don't know. But it is an abuse of power. I want to see much more pressure on these private companies to explain themselves, and not this vapid bureaucratic response. They should, face interviews. They should show their face once in a while, not just give these vague bureaucratic responses. They should, they should sit down in front of a journalist and be asked tough questions. They should explain themselves. I feel strongly about that. Um, but I hope this was, I don't know what the latest situation is with this one. It's a few weeks ago now, but my father's been in this situation. He's had fines imposed by um, private companies when he done nothing wrong, when he did not outstay the parking limit, things like that. For me, this is an issue about abuse of power and accountability. This is not to say that the public is always in the right. You will get people who fly tip. It is selfish and it is bad for the environment, but clearly these private companies cannot be trusted to do the right thing, because there's far, far too many examples of abuse of power, and it's abhorrent, it's disgusting, because they're not accountable, they're faceless. Um, if you are in this situation, who do you complain to? So I'm really sympathetic to Martin Fielder, and I hope he can get some peace on this. I hope they can, waive the whole thing, because clearly there isn't enough evidence to show that he's been deliberately fly tipping. They just need to use common sense. And finally, I do think bin men need to be better trained. It will vary from council to council, but in Sunderland, like I say, they just leave the bin back anywhere, not in front of the house where they found it. So I think, frankly, I don't want to sound like, it's not a fun job, and it's not like this isn't a snobby thing. It's just a question of fairness, because it's not right that householders are penalised for, frankly, the sloppy work of bin men. It's not right. Let me know your thoughts. Yeah, so they need to improve the training on that.